introduce Dr. Julia Stoll. She is a licensed professional counselor and child development specialist. She's a preschool counselor at Atlanta Speech School. Julia Stoll obtained a bachelor and master's of special education degrees from Clemson University, a master in education specialist degrees of licensed professional counseling from Georgia State, and a doctor of philosophy of infant and early childhood development from Fielding University. She is licensed professional counselor and a trained play therapist. Julia currently works at the Atlanta Speech School, where she serves as a preschool counselor and child development specialist in the Ham Center, Stepping Stones, and Keenan Preschools. We are very thankful to have Julia, and we are actually going to stop sharing so that Julia can then now take over and she will share. Thank you, Julia, for being here.
Oh, it's so exciting to be here. Okay, so
just stopped.
Yes, let me share my screen. I will tell you guys that I am a creative person, but not a technological person. So hopefully we'll get through this portion of it. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about behavior. So whether you are an educator or a parent or a grandparent or whatever it is, we are always wondering about children's behavior. So I think I love the title, Why Are You Doing That? Because I think that's the big question that we ask ourselves oftentimes with children. And today we're going to dive into a little bit about human behavior so that we can have a better sense of where kids are coming from. And it helps us to adjust the way that we respond to them. Because in the end, really the only person that we can change is ourselves. And through changing ourselves, we help support our students and our children. So I'm going to go ahead and let you know that this whole PowerPoint will be sent to you, hopefully, so that you don't have to feel like you have to copiously write things down. I'll also sort of give you a heads up, like asterisk, pay attention to this, because it might be useful for you when you're taking that little quiz at the end. But I have a couple books that I feel like are the Bibles of the information that I'm giving you guys right now. The first is A Parent's Guide to Understanding and Motivating Children. It's a tiny little book, so it doesn't take very long to read, and it is pretty much exactly what we're talking about today in a written form. So it's a great book to have. They're kind of hard to find these days. My favorites are like no longer being printed. I don't know what that means, but the other one is Perfect Parenting and Other Myths. All of these are philosophically come from the perspective of Adlerian therapy. So Alfred Adler is the psychologist who created this, this concept of human behavior. And so they're all Adlerian. And the last one is not listed here, but it's another great one, and it's called Winning Children Over. I know it's backward on my screen, but see how tiny it is? It's just a tiny little book by Francis Walton. And this one is for educators. So this is the exact same concepts that we're going to talk about today, but specifically thinking about educators. So it's a really easy, tiny little module. And if you want, my email is at the bottom. So if for some reason I'm moving too quickly or you want more information, y'all, please feel free to reach out to me. And I know that time is pretty tight for us, so you can also send me questions via email and I'll connect with you that way as well. Okay. So we're going to start off by kind of thinking about human nature. So in most cases, humans want three things. They want to be connected and have loving relationships with others. They want to feel valued and respected, and they want to belong as part of a group. Humans are born vulnerable. And for long periods of time, we are vulnerable, longer than most other mammals. And so as a result of that, we have created this socialized way of being. So we use each other to keep ourselves safe, to promote ourselves, to take care of ourselves, all of those things. So as a result of that, we have these needs for connection and love and relationship, but also these underlying needs to feel valued and a part of the group, that you're contributing to this group that really, in actuality, is keeping you alive. when we look at it, we're thinking about what social aspects of childhood. So when we're thinking about this socialization that we know humans need, what are the social aspects of childhood that then support success as adults? Because isn't that really what we're trying to do? Whether we're educators or parents, we are really trying our best to create and propel children towards successful adulthood. So the research shows us that there are three really majorly important things that kids need to experience from a socialization standpoint in order to propel them towards success as adults. The first is close relationships. So you're going to find, if any of my teachers are listening, they're going to laugh, because I'm always talking about relationship. That is the number one thing for any human, is that they feel this social connection. So actually, that is something that propels children towards success, is positive social relationships. Feeling like they're part of the community, so being of value to their community, and then also feeling like they have some control. So here's an asterisk for you. If you want to remember, there really are three important things that kids need to have over the course of their childhood in order for them to likely have success as adults. They need positive relationships. They need to feel like they are valued and contributing, and they need to feel like they have control over some aspects of their life. Those are really important things. So when we look at it from the perspective that I come from, and the counseling perspective I come from, we're looking at, there are really four vital things that lead in the direction of those three things that we talked about: that close connection in relationships, that feeling value and like you're a contributing factor in your community, and also feeling like you have some developmentally appropriate control over your life. So the four vital protections to this sense of belonging and being a part of the group that children need are what we call the crucial C's. And hopefully, because they're all C's and there's four of them, we can remember them because it sticks in our mind. The first one is connection. We need to feel connected to the people around us, to our community, whether it's our family community, our school community, our church community, our neighborhood community, all of those. We need to feel like we have some capability, like there's things that we can do, that we can be successful, that we count, that what we're doing is of value to the people in our community, and we need to experience courage. And we're going to kind of go through each one of these and talk a little bit more in depth. But as children are trying to move from more of a place of dependence on others to a place of independence, but even more so a place of interdependence. Because really, if you think about yourself as an adult, you are not a completely independent individual. You've built relationships with people around you that you can depend on, so that you become more of an interdependent person than a totally independent person. So as children are starting to move from that place of dependence to more of an interdependent model, these are really those important factors that we see that they have in order for them to be able to do that successfully. And they support that balance of being an independent person, but also recognizing and being okay with interdependence. So we'll kind of go through each one so we can be thinking about how do we create a sense of belonging for children. And then after we've talked about how we create that sense of belonging, we're going to talk a little bit about what happens when they're not feeling those feelings and when we see misbehavior, and how does that show us where they might not be belonging in their group at some point. So let's do this. Okay, so the first one that we're going to be talking about in our crucial C's is connection. So children who are connected in a constructive way in their community, be it their educational community, their home community, they can say with conviction, I believe that I belong. So this connection piece is when I always say, let's go back to the relationship. How's the relationship? Does the child feel like you value them, like you are a partner with them? And my students, my teachers will tell you, I spend a lot of time doing nurturing activities with my students. So very, very simple, interactive ways of engaging with them, making eye contact, having personal touch experience it because I'm working really, really hard to make sure there is a strong connection between me and the students that I work with, or me and the people that are a part of my family. So over time, each of us develop an idea of what we have to do in order to connect with other people that we depend on. And the more that we're showing this positive connection and their ability to make those connections together, the less likely it is that they're going to think the only way I can connect to people is by seeking negative attention or by being in control in a certain situation. I can make these connections in more positive ways. So a child who has that sense of human connection feels secure. They can reach out to others. They can be vulnerable in relationships. They can make friends. They can be cooperative, because cooperation requires that you negate your control at certain times, that you're willing to give up and relinquish your ideas and experiences on behalf of sharing and collaborating with somebody else. So you have to feel like you can make those connections if you are going to be able to cooperate. So that's connection. And that is really the first and the most in-depth one that we have to think about. So if we're kind of thinking of these as building blocks that go up, really the base is always that human connection. And it's always the thing that we come back to when we wonder why a student might be struggling. All right, so the next one is capability. So children who believe that they are capable can say with conviction, I believe that I can do it. So when we're thinking about the fact that over the course of our lives, we are all trying to achieve all different kinds of things. And we need to believe that that is possible, that we have something that we are capable of doing. And that capability is what propels us to try, even when something is hard. So those achievements are the things that direct us towards our independence. So a child, this kind of child, a child who feels capable, is one who feels competent, is willing to make those efforts, knows about their own capability, has self-control and self-discipline, because really self-control is about being able to say, I know I've got this. I know that I can suppress things that I want in response to what I need to do instead. And that in and of itself is impulse control is a capability skill. They can assume responsibility, which means they can recognize how they are a part of the experience that's happening and then take responsibility for what that means. And they're self-reliant. So to work on capability with kids, one of the main things that we do is we provide them with jobs. We tell them what it is that they are capable of. So whether it's a 2-year-old classroom where you get to be the line leader, or it's a high school where you are the president of the student council, these are all jobs that children are given over time that help them to be able to feel like they have capability, that they are committed to something that's part of their community that is contributing in some way. In addition, it's caring for themselves. So when we talk developmentally about how are we providing kids with opportunities to feel capable, we are asking them to brush their teeth when they're capable of doing that, or we're letting them tie their shoes. I think a lot of times as parents, even more so than educators, as parents, we do the convenient thing. So we know you might be capable of that, but I'm in a hurry, so I'm just going to do that for you. And what we do is undermine that capability for our children at that time. I think I have 3 children that are all teenagers now, but I think back to when they were super little and how, although I would go to school and take care of other people's children and push their capability and say, no, carry your own bag into the building. No, you can tie your shoe. No, you've got this. I would come home and I would not always be as successful at that. Sometimes it was easier and quicker for me to manage them and to say, I got this, I'll do this because we're in a hurry. But we do have to remember, are we robbing our children ever from opportunities to prove their own capability? Because it is one of those crucial C's. Relationship connection is first. Feeling like you're capable is second. These things are building blocks on top of each other. Okay. So next of the crucial C's is counting. So a child who believes that they count in constructive ways can say with conviction, I believe that I matter and I can make a difference. So that means that I am contributing. Not only am I capable of accomplishing things, these goals, or being able to do them, it is of value to my community. It is something that makes me belong in this system. And that is very important. So one of those things that we need relationships, we need to feel valued. So if you count, if you are contributing, that is where you feel that value. That is where the value comes for you. So this child is a child who feels valuable and significant, whether it's in their classroom, whether it's in their family system, whether it's with their neighborhood friends, whatever it is, they feel like they come to the table bringing something of value, and that there is significance in that people are excited that they are there because of what they share with the community. They believe that they can make a difference. They believe that they are capable. They contribute constructively to their community. And all of these things happen in developmentally appropriate ways. So even 3-year-olds in a preschool class have ways in which they feel that they're contributing to their classroom. And you can see that. You can see the value that they feel when they have that contribution is being made. So membership in the community and contribution. So I'm a member of something that really is important, and I can make a difference to that group of people that I'm a member of. All right, so let's look at courage. Courage is a big one. So if we're stacking on top of each other, and at the very top of that is courage. If you think about, there is nothing that kids have to pass through developmentally that comes without mistakes, unless it was an accident. Like maybe you have a kid that you can think of who just stood up and started walking one day. Like that is not typical. Typically kids have to try to get up and they fall down and they have all these accidents, and it takes courage. Development and growth and learning, it takes courage. You have to be willing to sit in the discomfort. You have to be willing to try the hard thing. You have to be willing to be afraid in order to grow, in order to learn. All these things that we want them to do, all of them are uncomfortable things that require them to change and grow. And so courage, grit, persistence, resilience, all those words, wonderful words that we use, are really one of those majorly important, crucial C's that we're talking about. So a child who with courage could say with conviction, I believe that I can handle what comes. They're not saying, I believe that it will be easy. They're saying, I believe I can push through. I believe I can make it. I believe I can get back up and I can do this again. And that is what courage is. And that ability to try again is something that propels children to success as adults as well. So courage is not the absence of fear. It's the willingness to push through the fear and the discomfort to get to whatever it is that their goal is. And sometimes that goal is their goal. And sometimes that goal is someone else's goal on behalf of them. So what I mean by that is, I just recently watched one of my 2-year-olds in a 2-year-old class swinging on the swing, and she let go with one hand to wipe her nose and she fell off the swing. And we took care of her, made sure she was okay. And after she was done crying, she said, I get back on. Now, that right there is courage. That is a self-driven courage, because we were not going to tell her she had to get back on that swing. She wanted back on that swing. Self-driven courage, self-goal. But sometimes we say, now it's time for you to learn this skill. Now it's time for you to sit and listen. And that is my goal on behalf of you. And that takes courage too. So we need to remember that we're not just talking about those self-propelled goals, but we are also talking about the external goals, the goals that we set aside for our children, that we have to ask them to have courage to push through the discomfort and accomplish those goals as well. So self-set goals, external set goals, all of those require courage. Okay. So what does this mean? Where does misbehavior come into this whole conversation and relationship to these things that we talked about that propel children into positive, successful adult situations? We just talked about proactively. The crucial C's are all the things that we do proactively to set our children up to make sure that they have success. But even the very best of us, whether we're the best educators or the best parents or the best people, we still have to respond and see our children that we are caring for managing misbehavior. So where does that come from? What does that mean? All humans are striving to fulfill their need to belong. So we've talked about that. Everybody wants to belong. And we use all different kinds of behaviors in order to belong. There are constructive behaviors that help us to belong, and there are also misbehaviors that can help us to belong. So being the class clown, being the one who stirs it up, being the one in the group, in the family who is causing problems, that's a way of belonging. I am belonging by being the naughty kid. I am belonging by being the one who's pulled away and withdrawn. So both positive and negative belonging are still belonging. And that's hard to think about and hard to imagine. So when you're thinking negative attention is still attention, but it doesn't feel like good attention. So we wonder, why would a kid still want that? But it's attention. It's a way to get what your need is. And every kid is designing, not consciously, but unconsciously designing this fulfillment strategy. So goal is to belong. How do I fulfill and reach that goal? What are the strategies that I use? And if I don't feel like I'm having those connections, if I don't feel like I'm capable, if I don't feel like I count or I can contribute, or I've lost my courage, my fulfillment strategy to belong is going to look different. It may not be positive. So what we're going to do is think a little bit about, with that in mind, if we know that all of the behaviors that we choose, whether it's us as adults or children themselves, are a part of our fulfillment strategy in order for us to try to belong in some way in part of our community, how can we start to recognize what is that goal? Although it is a mistaken goal, what is that goal that we are seeing when we see this behavior, this misbehavior of our kiddos? So really, when we're talking about the root of the problem, it's not misbehavior is the problem. Actually, misbehavior is the child's fulfillment strategy, their solution to whatever the problem is that they're having. And those of us who are Adlerian will say it comes down to encouragement versus discouragement. So when we see a child with behavior problems, what we see is a discouraged human, a child who does not feel like those crucial C's are a part of who they are. And that is very discouraging. So being able to notice and recognize that and start to reframe the way we're looking at misbehavior so that we can help to be more encouraging towards that child to reduce that mistaken goal and work towards a more positive way of being a part and belonging in the community is important. So we think about what are those coping strategies that the children are using to compensate for those crucial C's that are missing. And we think, we have to help them to come up with an alternative solution. But before we would make the assumption is fully a discouraged child, we have to make sure that we go down the list of questions about where the behavior came from. First and foremost, is this a developmental thing? So I'm not going to call not sharing when you're 18 months old a misbehavior, because developmentally your brain does not understand that concept of shared social perspective, of ownership, of things like that. So it's not fair to say, oh, we're going to label that one as a misbehavior, because developmentally it's not, their little brains are not set up and designed to manage that yet. So you always have to ask yourself, when you're looking at what looks like a misbehavior to you as the educator, as the parent, as the adult, you have to ask yourself, is this a developmental skill? And do I need to really rethink the way what I'm expecting from them for that reason? I also ask, is it medical? You always need to say, is there an underlying medical reason that that this child is having this experience? I also say, do they see this out in their world? So is this a behavior that they have seen often? They're replicating. If that's the case, then we just need to re-educate them. And then the last one is exposure. My friends, we have had a lot of young children and older children who've been isolated due to COVID, and you would be amazed by the impact that's had to their lack of social training. So oftentimes we go, oh, you haven't been in school for a year. And so the reason why when we're in circle time, you just get up and walk around the room is because nobody had you in circle time when you were quarantined in your own house. So we have to think about lack of training too. So before we assume, wow, this is a difficult, discouraged child, maybe we have to take into mind some of the things that we're looking at. And then if we can still say, no, it's not those things, then we start to say, oh, so we have a discouraged kid, a kid who's missing out on some of those crucial C's and is using mistaken goals of behavior to try to belong in their environment. So we're going to break those mistaken goals down. And what I love about this concept is we're not just going to look at mistaken goals of the child, we're also going to talk about how it makes us feel. And I love that the best because I may not ever really know why a child is doing something they're doing, but I do know how it makes me feel. And if I can be self-aware of my own feelings in this relationship with a child or a student, I can have a better sense of what they're trying to accomplish and think to myself, is there a way that I can help them accomplish that that's going to be more successful? So we'll go through each one. The first one, I'm just checking my time. The first one is attention, and then power, and then revenge, and assumed inadequacy and withdrawal. And in many ways, these are sort of stair step too. But sometimes we have kids who are born that right out of the gates, they're power seeking kids. And so it can be variable, but we'll kind of go through and look at each one. So the first one is undue attention as a way to connect. Mistaken goal number one, attention seeking. So undue attention is a demand. So a lot of times parents will say, but I give my kids so much attention, right? You give them this positive, constructive, connective attention. Undue attention is any sort of demand of attention right away. So undue attention, when a child is seeking undue attention as a way to make a connection with somebody, as a parent or an educator, you will most likely feel irritated or annoyed. So I like to think of mistaken goal of behavior one, attention, as the fly buzzing around your ear. So it is anything that our kids or our students are doing that we feel like, oh my gosh, could you please just stop? Like, that's enough. That is an seeking undue attention instead of positive, constructive connection. So when we have a kiddo who is seeking undue attention, we have to think to ourselves, does this child feel that constructive connection? Am I imparting them with opportunities throughout their day, throughout their life, that there are strong connections being made between me and this child so that when I am not available for that attention connection, that constructive connection, they feel set up for success without me. So thinking of it like the bank, we got to put the deposits in for the positive constructive attention so that when we have to make that withdrawal and say, I'm on the phone right now, I cannot talk to you, or it's not your turn for me as your educator to be connected with you, we don't see these demands of our attention happening. So some of the ways that we can manage that when we do see those undue areas of attention is minimize the response as much as possible. So trying to ignore things that we can ignore. Man, is that complicated as the adult, especially if it's a fly buzzing in your ear kind of behavior. It can be very, very difficult to ignore. But when we can, we should, and then think to ourselves, I'm not just ignoring that so that that will stop. I'm ignoring that and making a note of the fact that I need to fill that bank again because it's empty. So we can say, oh, I'll ignore those negative behaviors, but the secondary piece of that is, how am I coming back and refilling that kid's bank? Because what they're telling me with that undue attention is they need me to give them constructive attention as an alternative. So we can't just ignore them. We have to ignore and fill later. The next one is to notice what they're doing appropriately and encourage that all the time. And I tell, when I work with parents around this, I say, you have to almost be obnoxiously sticky sweet. And if you ever saw the way I work with kids, it is kind of a little bit clowny. Like, I'm like really big and in the way that I engage with them, because they need to hear me say what they're doing right all the time in order for it to become a habit. So this is a thing that you would have to do, is notice and encourage when they are doing what you want them to do. And then also think about, how am I noticing it way before the problem starts? And that's one of the things that we really all struggle with, whether we're an educator or a parent, is when our kids are doing the right thing, we forget to tell them they're doing the right thing, but we sure know how to tell them when they're doing the wrong thing. So we really need to be thinking, how am I noticing when they're doing those things, and how am I filling up that bank of encouragement for them by saying, look at you, look how you know how to do this, look how you're following that expectation, you are amazing, and making those connections with them in those positive ways to fill that bank, so that when we do have to say, I do not have the attention for you right now, they are still full. And then acting, don't talk too much talking. So to be able to, a lot of times we just have to respond, but if we give a long explanation about things, kids stop listening to us. And so you think you're giving them attention by explaining to them why you can't give them attention, but what they've done is shut you off, and you feel like you put something in, but you really didn't, because they were not available for that. So that is attention, mistaken goal of attention. Let's look at the next one. The second mistaken goal is seeking power as a way to feel capable. So everybody has had a power struggle with their child or their students. Pretty much everybody can say that that has happened. And I love this, this cartoon at the home of the Springsteens, where she says, yeah, well, you're not the boss of me. That is a power and control kiddo right there for sure. So undue power, when we're talking about the negative side of power seeking, we're talking about a dictatorship. I am in charge. This is the way it's going. It will happen this way no matter what. If it doesn't happen this way, I'm burning the ship down. That's what we're talking about when we talk about power. So seeking power as a way to feel capable. So you can't control me is me saying I'm at least capable of telling you you can't control me. So versus a positive power, where that is more an empowered situation. I am capable, I've got this, I can do this. There are lots of ways that I have control of my life. And if we talked about that, if you think about those three things I told you that kids need the most: relationships, they need to feel valued, and they need to feel like they have some control, developmentally appropriate, but some control. I get to choose the clothes I want to wear. I get to decide whether I'm going to use this spoon or this spoon. How are we throughout our day imparting them with lots of opportunities to feel like they have control over things, so that they don't go seeking dictatorship in other ways? I refuse to do this. I am not doing this. You cannot make me do that. So when we are working with kids, or when our students or children are using the mistaken goal of seeking power as a way to feel capable, it makes us feel angry and challenged. So a power struggle makes you feel defensive, and it's like, oh no, I will win this. If you in any part of your brain can recognize yourself saying that in your mind to your student or your child, you are in a power struggle. You are with a child who does not feel capable of finding control in their own little life, and what they are now doing is seeking power negatively. So if you can recognize that, you can step back and say to yourself, how am I going to pump this kid full of capability? How am I going to help them know that, in fact, they have lots of ways that they can have control in their life? It just so happens that maybe it's not this thing right here, but it's all these other things. So again, what we're doing when we are thinking about these mistaken goals of behavior is we are thinking, how are we reframing what we do so that we empower them with those crucial C's, and they don't need to seek power as a way of feeling capable. They don't need to seek undue attention as a way of being connected. So a lot of times your impulse is going to be to fight back or to insist. But what we really need to be doing is thinking about what they can do rather than what they can't do. So pointing out to them, these are all the choices that you have. This one's not a choice, but these are all the choices that you have. I'm not just going to tell you no, I'm going to tell you, here are all the yeses, because that is creating a sense of capability and control for our kids. We need to correct, be careful that when we are correcting our children, that we are correcting the behavior and not the child. Because if you start associating the behavior with the child in a power situation, you are going to back that power kid into the corner even further. So talking about the behavior as an issue, not the child as an issue. And then do not escalate. That is so tough, because when we are in a situation where we feel like a child is stripping our power or trying to prove to us that they are in more control than we are, what's the first thing we want to do as human beings who also need the crucial C's? We want to take that power back. We want to feel like we are the capable ones, but it is not a helpful situation to put ourselves in. So we have to try to de-escalate the situation and then look to see what can we do to create more constructive power opportunities for our child or our student. And then giving responsibilities to children that are appropriate is another way for them to feel that power and ownership. So how am I thinking back to say, if you're a child who is getting in power struggles with me, then how are we making sure that you have those power opportunities in other ways? All right, I'm hurrying. I know I'm running out of time. Next is the mistaken goal of revenge. So seeking revenge in order to count. So revenge seekers are eyes for eyes kinds of situations. Like if you made me feel so mad, I'm going to make you feel so mad. Or you hurt my feelings so bad, I'm going to make you hurt too. These are the revenge seeking situations. The opposite of that would be accepting responsibility, would be being willing to say, wow, I played a role in this situation, and I really want to learn from my mistakes. So seeking revenge in order to count. So I don't feel like I count, and as a result, I'm going to hurt. I want to hurt others. So as the parent or the caregiver, when a child is seeking revenge, it makes you feel hurt. It makes you feel victimized. It's heartbreaking to you. And a lot of times we want to teach them a lesson. We want to punish them back because the cycle's the same. We are also a human. So if you hurt me, a lot of times it makes me want to hurt you back. And I remember one time when my husband and we were younger and our kids were younger, and my daughter was in a revenge cycle with my husband. She was really trying to make him mad, and he said something really ugly to her. And I walked into the room and I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I don't know, but it feels good." Now, friends, if you have a teaching or parenting moment like that, you are seeking revenge against your child, and you have to pause and say, wait, should I have a situation in my life where it feels good for me to be ugly to my kid? No, I shouldn't. I'm in this revenge cycle situation. So we need to think, I feel hurt and victimized, and so I'm lashing out and hurting as well. So we've got to stop and pause this cycle and move on. So how do we go about doing that? we would make a list of the positive things that we noticed about our student or our kiddo and really start pumping in and talking about those kinds of things. We would refuse to retaliate. So in my husband's situation, he needs to take a second. He needs to go cool off, because trying to engage in this cyclical pattern is not going to be supportive of the child making a change and feeling capable, connected, and competent, or you feeling like a capable, connected, competent parent either. So cooling off, taking a cool off minute before you move forward. Again, finding ways that child can contribute is going to be really important. And then working together to solve problems. So thinking about, depending on the age of the child, asking children how they could be involved in making a change in that behavior. And you'd be surprised, 3-year-olds, 2-year-olds can do this kind of work if you talk to them the right way about it. All right, I'm trying to hurry. All right, so we'll go through the last one, and then I have a little chart that you can look at later. So the last one is the mistaken goal number 4, using assumed inadequacy or withdrawal to avoid failure. So this is where you just give up. Assumed inadequacy is, I'm not sure I can do it, so I'm not even going to try. And that's the opposite of a growth mindset, which means I can't, would be saying I can't do it yet, but I'm going to try. So when children are using assumed inadequacy or withdrawal to avoid failure, it makes us feel hopeless. It makes us feel sad and just in despair. And a lot of times we just say, I don't even know what to do anymore. But what we need to be thinking about doing is going back and scaffolding that experience for that child. How do we go back and provide them with opportunities for success and then slowly withdraw ourselves from the situation? So make mistakes a learning experience and say, oh, wow, that seemed like it was a little too hard. Let's start back a little and think about that just right challenge. Start back a little further with more support, and then build your capability and your competence, and then remove ourselves from that. And recognize the effort. So process, not products. That's going to be really important. Teach positive self-talk. So reminding kids to say, I got this, I can do this. I do that a lot with students where I ask them to do that to each other. So when somebody's working on something that's hard, I ask the community of learners to give them that positive self-talk. And then by doing that, they're also learning they can do that for themselves. And then don't give up on the kiddo. Remember that what they're feeling, that sense of inadequacy and failure, is just bleeding into how you feel. So if you begin to feel inadequate and withdraw, then it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy and another cyclical pattern. The last thing I have here is a chart that you, when you get copies of this, will have to take with you, that I believe is super helpful, because what it does is it goes down each one of those mistaken goals, and then across, it's going to tell you, what does the child actually need? Instead of this negative attention that they're seeking, this power that they're seeking. It tells you how you might feel when that is happening. So if you feel annoyed, or you feel provoked, or you feel hurt, it will help you to figure out where they're coming from. And then how you can respond to that so that it would happen to you in a different way. Because remember that those crucial C's, connection is about cooperation and being in a relationship. Capability is about building that self-reliance. Counting is about a contribution and knowing that you have contributed. And then courage is all about resiliency, being willing to try and make that effort. And so I think this chart is super helpful just to have around, so that you can use it as a reference to think, what can I do? Because the big message here is, what can I do differently that would help support my child choosing an alternate way of behaving? All right, that was super fast.
That was fast, but that was awesome. I know we could do this for days, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I hope that I was not talking too quickly for everybody, but please know that that email address that I gave is my email address at the Atlanta Speech School, and I'm more than happy to have conversations with. This is like my favorite, my jam. So I'm more than happy to have conversations with people. And if you think of something related to what you're doing in your own practice or at home, and you could use some help or want to kind of problem solve, I'm happy to.
Yeah, my husband felt like you were talking about Taylor the whole time with us. So I was like, oh, well, we're actually friends with Miss Julia, so maybe we should have a meeting with her. Yeah, and dinner. So we're gonna, Nikki's going to read one question that we have. We really don't have much time for many more than that.
Yeah.
So let's try to quickly do this one. Nikki,
Yes. Yes, it says, my daughter keeps singing and my son keeps saying, stop it, please stop it. It happens every day, literally 100 times a day minimum. My daughter doesn't usually stop and she likes to sing, so I hate taking that away from her, but it annoys him to no end. I can't seem to get the loop to stop. Any suggestions? I've tried distraction techniques and engaged my daughter in a would you rather type game, but then she goes right back to it.
Yes. So I think you have to think a lot. If what I would say in a situation like that, and this is pretty much any of the situations that any of you guys are thinking about, and I know we can all think of a situation like this. I would think, what are both of their needs? What is his need? What is he asking for that he's not getting, so that he has to keep asking for it? And what is she doing and needing that she is going to keep doing just despite his feedback? And then how do we try to reach those goals for each one of them? So how do we create safe space where she gets to sing and knows that this is my place where I go to sing and this is what I do? And then how do we also have his voice be heard and for him to be able to say, these are environments where I'm allowed to say, please don't do that. So that may be where you have to come together with the group and say, all right, we need to figure out where singing is always a possibility. We need to figure out where our quiet spaces are. And we need to then have an understanding that we've made that we're meeting both of these people's goals. So I think you kind of have to break it down more, because if we just give the answer to everybody, you have to be quiet because it's bothering your brother, or she gets to sing. All we've done is give our solution and not allow the children to then think about what is it that they needed to fix the problem, and have their voice be heard, and then work together. That's that cooperative, collaborative piece of let's solve this problem in a way that meets both of our needs.
Thank you, Julia. This is
You're welcome.
So great. We love it. People are just commenting on chat. I know you can't read it, but they love it. They love the chart. They love your talk, and they feel like you've given really some great resources. So thank you again.
Well, I'm so glad I could be here, and this is such great work, and you know how it's a part of my heart too. So, yeah.
So we're going to ask you to stop sharing your screen.
Okay.
And forever grateful for your presentation.
Absolutely.
And
all right. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Sherry, Linda, I have the online evaluation form link in the chat right now. This is the only way people can access that form. You'll see the bit.ly link. Go on and open that link and fill in the form to receive CEUs. For our phone listeners, I have directly sent you that link since you won't be able to access it via chat.
Okay, did you listen to Nikki? Okay, so while you were doing that, we've got a little introduction for any of you that are interested in listening and spoken language. There are 2 agencies in Georgia that do provide either individual or in classrooms listening and spoken language to children that are deaf and hard of hearing. And we're going to show you 2 really quick videos that you can see. And then we're going to go into our next presenter.
We like to call ourselves the Hamily because in some schools, there is maybe one other teacher who understands the needs of children who are deaf or hard of hearing. But at the Atlanta Speech School, there are 12, 13, 14 other teachers who are doing exactly what I'm doing.
I love the speech school because I was with kids like me and I was able to learn about my hearing loss.
Not only did they teach me to listen, but they taught me how to work hard. They taught me how to persevere through disability. They taught me how to overcome obstacles. It was so much more than just listening to learn.
My teacher taught me how to count and read. and they were so nice.
Families come and they tour the school and they see a 4-year-old talking in full sentences and having a conversation with their teachers, and they say that's what I'm looking for my own child.
I was amazed. I was amazed by how the kids were talking, how they were communicating, and I wanted my daughter to be like them.
I think the Atlanta Speech School, because without them, my sister wouldn't have learned to talk and how to talk to other people and socialize with them.
It's really neat that our children have other children in the classrooms who may have the same hearing technology as they do. Some of our teachers and assistant teachers also wear hearing aids.
Where's baby? Peekaboo!
It's a great place for kids who have hearing loss, and they also teach how to talk so you can tell your friends, teachers how your hearing loss works.
Every time I walk in, I feel like home. I feel the same way I do when I go to like my actual house. Like, it's just home. It's a family. Everyone there, like, I know they love and care for me just like I love and care for them.
I would say there's no better time than today to join the family or the Hamily at the Atlanta Speech School. Your child will grow beyond measure.
I love going to the speech school.
Now we're gonna go to our next video. Auditory, you want to?
The Auditory Verbal Center is next.
One of my leaders in our field says that hearing loss isn't a hearing problem, it's a brain problem. And when a child has an issue with their hearing, the doorway to getting sound to the brain is closed.
What we do in auditory verbal therapy is we are developing that child's auditory pathways. We're developing that child's auditory areas of their brain.
Cochlear implants are wonderful devices that bring access to sound to a child's ear.
The key to auditory verbal approach is to start as young as you can. What we're doing is teaching that child how to put meaning to the sound that they hear.
Children who are born deaf can be identified with having hearing loss the day they are born. They can be fit with hearing aids within a couple weeks, can get cochlear implants at a young age.
I really enjoy the type of therapy that auditory verbal therapy is, and that is working with parents and building a relationship with parents and help them understand different strategies that help their kids.
It's just so warming, and everyone in the room just lights up to see a child who wasn't responding to sound giggle at the sound of a squeaky toy for the first time.
Teletherapy is a wonderful way for families who can't make it to the center, or maybe not every week to the center, to be able to access therapy services.
To see the joy that comes to their face when they are hearing sounds that they haven't heard for the first time, with the help of a cochlear implant and the right early intervention, deaf children can hear and speak.
65% of our families are on Medicaid. And then we have some that are scholarshiped because insurance won't pay for the teletherapy. But at the end of the day, every child deserves the right to hear their mom say, "I love you." So we will never turn a child away because of money, and we'll never put a child on a wait list.